Hello, all you beautiful people in the digital world, and welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced In Later, an episode I'm very happy to be able to bring to you before I take off on a very well deserved vacation. As I said when I dropped my earlier episode this week, when we talked about Charlie Chaplin and modern times and the silent film era, I will not be able to do episodes for a few weeks because I'm going on a little holiday, getting to visit some really cool places like Disneyland and San Francisco and New Orleans, pretty much jet setting around America, essentially, which is very exciting. Also very nerve-wracking because thanks to COVID, we've not gone many places. So it'll be interesting to see if I make it around all there in one piece. If I don't, this episode can be a testament to the last things that I ever did. That's very morbid. We won't do that. But I did want to hopefully do this episode for you all before I left. It is a movie review, and it is a movie that has just dropped on Disney Plus, as in just a few hours ago, depending on where you are in the world. I really wanted to review it because it fits with all the other types of movies that I have reviewed, the content that we talk about here on this podcast. But I set off on my travels tomorrow, so I had to be on top of my game, essentially. I had to be packed, I had to be ready, I had to have sorted everything out in my world, and also find a way to watch the film, because I don't always have Disney Plus. So was I going to make the time to get Disney Plus to renew my subscription, or find other ways to watch the film, and would that be easy? Am I in the right mindset to watch the movie? Because I'm very stressed. Luckily, things worked out because for once, I think I'm relatively prepared. So happily, this will not be a very extensive review. It's not going to be incredibly long because I do have things I still need to wrap up. I've literally just finished watching the movie and I'm just now recording this. So it might be a bit all over the place. It might be a bit vague. But you'll at least get Spliced In Later's opinion of this movie, which I think is a bit more positive than what it is currently getting in terms of reviews that have just been dropped. I'm not sure. I don't think they're too harsh. I think they also might be a little harsh, if that makes any sense. So today, we'll get right into it. We are reviewing the newest live-action remake of a Disney animated classic, specifically Pinocchio. This Pinocchio film stars Tom Hanks, and it is based specifically on the Pinocchio Disney animated film, the second in the long line of animated classics that came out in, I'm not sure, I believe it's 1940. I could be wrong, but it's definitely in that golden age of Disney classics. You would be forgiven if you were confused, because according to my checkings, we get a new Pinocchio film like once a year. There was one that was released by Roberto Benigni, which came out last year, and later this year, Guillermo del Toro is doing another Pinocchio. And aside from the classic Disney Pinocchio, there's many different tales based on the fairy tale folk story of the little wooden puppet called Disney. My apologies. Called Pinocchio, carved by the woodcarver Geppetto, who goes on all sorts of adventures with his little conscience sidekick, Jiminy Cricket. This film here joins the long line of live-action remakes that we've got in the last few years, which range in quality. I think when it comes down to it, your appreciation of these live-action remakes really depends on how much you love the film that is being adapted and how much what your expectations are for it. Whether you want the film to be a complete play-by-play adaptation of the original film that doesn't stray from the source material, or if you want it to be a completely different film to distinguish it from the original film. For me, that varies because I have specific Disney films I really like and some that I'm not too invested in, meaning my opinions of them will be different to a lot of people. We'll all have different reactions to it. I think the list, if you include Cinderella, which I think most people do, you've also got The Jungle Book, Dumbo, Aladdin, The Lion King, and Mulan. I don't really include the Alice in Wonderland movie because that's sort of, if it is anything, it's a sequel. And the different versions of the 101 Dalmatians are their own sort of thing. The Glenn Close movies are quite good. I quite like them, but I don't really feel that they're play-by-play adaptation or adapted specifically from that original Disney animated classic. And the Cruella film was kind of like Maleficent. It's a different spin on the story, but tells its own story as well. It's not specifically an adaptation of that. And as I said, my opinions of these live action remakes are very, very different. I started this podcast around the time the Mulan remake came out, and if you're long-time listeners to this show, you know I hated it. I called it one of the worst movies I've ever seen. That specifically is because Mulan, the animated movie, is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies, one of my all-time favorite movies in general. So I didn't like what they did with that film. I don't mind the Aladdin remake starring Will Smith. I don't think it's incredible, but I don't hate it. But I have a friend who despises Aladdin with every fiber of his being because he loves the original Aladdin story. For me as well, I've never been hugely attached to the Dumbo story. I think it's a perfectly fine Disney film that showcases Disney's early days, but at 62 minutes, I don't think there's enough there to be truly invested in the film. So I actually really kind of enjoy the Tim Burton Dumbo remake that came out. But, same thing, I hear people think that it's trash. The Lion King, I think it's fine. The Jungle Book, I think, is the gold standard. The Jungle Book took the original Jungle Book story, kept the lovable characters and the themes and the general tone of the story that's from that Disney animated classic, but beefed up the story, added some weight, changed some characters around so it was its own thing. And I believe it being successful both critically and commercially is why we just apparently are going to get a live action remake for every Disney animated classic that's ever come out. I looked at the filmography coming up. I believe The Little Mermaid is next, but I mean, they're doing a live action Lilo and Stitch movie. That's crazy. So it looks like I'll be reviewing these for quite some time. So this one, Pinocchio, is a Disney Plus exclusive. It's not going to the theaters. Oh, there you go. Another live action Disney remake. Lady and the Tramp is also in this list. And like Pinocchio, it was a Disney Plus exclusive. I completely forgot all about it because I watched it once in 2019 and it's never been released on DVD, so I just forgot all about it. That's perfectly fine too. Lady and the Tramp and Pinocchio, though, they feel like the same sort of approach has been made for these movies. Not too much has been invested in terms of money. They've been made with the idea that they're going straight to streaming, so there's not a huge investment in it per se. But I do think this one, Pinocchio, has more of a visual style and has more of an impact, I think, than the Lady and the Tramp live action remake. So yeah, exclusively on Disney Plus. You got to have Disney Plus to watch it. And it is basically Pinocchio told again. Tom Hanks plays Geppetto. If you're unfamiliar with the Pinocchio story, okay, where have you been? But basically, Geppetto builds a little wooden boy called Pinocchio. Then he makes a wish upon a star that he wishes Pinocchio would be a real boy. The Blue Fairy comes down, brings Pinocchio to life, but says he's not a real boy yet until he learns all these core values of being a boy, which is to be brave, selfless, truthful. At the same time, for some reason, there's a cricket nearby called Jiminy Cricket, and the Blue Fairy goes, "You can be this puppet's conscience, okay, bye," and off she goes. In that original Disney movie, it's a very short movie. It really only encompasses a day, but a lot happens to Pinocchio. First, he goes off to school. Then he's talked by some conmen into joining a puppet show. Then that puppet show abducts him. He escapes the puppet show, but ends up with a bunch of boys headed to Pleasure Island. All the boys there start turning into donkeys because they're brats. Pinocchio escapes, ends up in the belly of a whale with Geppetto, and learns all the valuable lessons he needs to along the way. All of that basically happens in this movie. As with most live-action Disney remakes, for some reason, there's this idea that they all have to be 2 hours in length, regardless of whether there's enough substance to make it to 2 hours, which means a lot of things in this movie are dragged out. The opening stuff with Geppetto, we don't leave Geppetto's house for the first full half hour of the movie. It's in that one setting and it's beat, beat, beat. All these different things happen for the story to go, but they are really stretched out to really hit that runtime. Some extra side characters are thrown in, a couple of extra songs, some more visuals to push it to that 2 hour mark. It doesn't need to be, especially because the Pinocchio story is solid. Of the Golden Age Disney animated classics, Pinocchio is my favorite by a large margin. Snow White is good for being the first Disney animated classic ever, but it's dated and it has its faults and it's not aged particularly well in my opinion. Fantasia is something completely different, so I don't normally rank it with all this other stuff here. And Bambi and Dumbo are perfectly fine, but I feel like they try more to show off the animation styles that Disney were developing, and the stories that are in them itself are pretty not flimsy by any sense, but there's not a lot of weight and substance to it. We all know Bambi's mum dies, but I challenge you to tell me what else happens in the movie about Bambi. Yeah, have a think about that. And the same with Dumbo. Or Dumbo's movie, Dumbo flies because he's got big ears. Yes, he does. But do you know he doesn't fly until after 60 minutes and the movie ends at 64 minutes? There you go. But Pinocchio has a solid beginning, middle, and end, a solid protagonist, solid side characters, different antagonists, lessons are learned, truths uncovered, all of that stuff. There's some twists and turns, excitement, action, danger, even a little bit of horror imagery. There's a lot going on in that original Pinocchio movie. So that means going into this movie, I had high expectations simply because I respect Pinocchio as a film and as a Disney classic. And I hadn't been particularly impressed by the trailers. I mentioned it in my Modern Times review. People were going, oh, you can feel the magic in the Disney trailer. But I couldn't feel any of it. It seemed lifeless. It seemed void of any sort of real heart and substance. And just playing the When You Wish Upon a Star music, in my opinion, doesn't mean there's magic in the movie. It's just tapping into that little bit of your brain that associates the Wish Upon a Star theme with Disney in general. And everybody feels elated when they hear the Disney music. I'm the same. I hear that music. I'm reminded that I will be in Disneyland in 2 days, this weekend. That's where I'll be. So my brain starts to go, oh, maybe I like this movie because I heard that music. So I started off this movie going, I'm probably going to hate it. But by the end of the movie, I thought it's perfectly fine. It's not a great movie in any sense, but it's not a terrible movie. I don't hate it like I hate Mulan. I'm not indifferent to it like I am with the live action Lion King. I think it, for what it's worth, the director is Robert Zemeckis. I feel like at least with this movie, his visual style, the way he directs films, is very present in this film. I feel like the side characters, the actors in here, are really putting in the effort to sell their characters. And in regards of the Pinocchio story, the morals, it's all there. And if your kids have never seen the original Pinocchio, and this is the only Pinocchio they can get their hands on, it won't hurt them to watch it. Its only real drawback is that it is very safe. It is by the numbers. In those examples I said of live action Disney remakes, it falls into the just doing the same movie again, but longer. Which means it doesn't do anything controversial. It doesn't do anything to really stick with you to go, oh, that's a bit different from the original movie. But it doesn't do anything particularly exciting to go, that was pretty cool. Wow, that was awesome. I appreciate what it is. I don't hate it. But I probably will struggle like I do with Lady and the Tramp now to really remember much about it after a couple of days. Some positives for it is it actually looks really good for a straight to streaming Disney Plus movie. The visuals, the CGI, the direction looks very solid. I was pretty impressed by it. There are a couple of moments in this movie. Let me see. For example, the trip to Pleasure Island, when Pinocchio first arrives on Pleasure Island and he goes on a little boat ride that shows off the actual nightmare world that this place is. It's visually stunning and it looks incredible. And then you sort of realize once that's happening that for the most part, there's very few live action actors in here. There's Tom Hanks, Luke Evans, somebody else whose name I can't remember, I apologize. But the rest of it is CGI characters on CGI backdrops, I assume. I can't imagine what it was like for Tom Hanks to sit in an empty green screen room and interact with like 6 or 7 different CGI characters. But it doesn't stand out like that. You don't watch the movie and go, this is all CGI, I can tell. It doesn't look 100% real, but it's not the Polar Express Uncanny Valley sort of thing, if that makes sense. Visually, it's a delight on the eyes. I think the colors, the magic that everybody was talking about when they were watching the trailer that I didn't get, I got it watching this. This felt like a Disney film that had been brought to life in a live action-y sort of way. Whether it was the Pleasure Island, lights and excitement, or when Pinocchio ventures out into the ocean and comes across Monstro, who for this movie is a sea monster instead of a whale. I don't care either way. Monstro can be whatever he likes. But that water, that's CGI water, but it looks like real water to me. Pinocchio having a little song and dance with Honest John and Gideon. Grateful stuff. The only CGI I think that really didn't work for me is the cat, Figaro. Maybe it's because I have my own cats, and I know what real cats look like, but it's odd that all the other CGI was pretty solid, but they just couldn't be that bothered to make the cat look real. Any sort of real. It's still a cute little CGI thing, but it's very clearly that's not a real cat, which is funny when you look at everything else in the movie. The performances are pretty good. Tom Hanks, he's the nicest man in Hollywood. He puts 110% into Geppetto. His only real fault is I don't think he knows if he's trying to be Italian or American or somewhere in the middle. His accent constantly slips. And I don't think Tom Hanks is a singer. And I think he knows that. But there are moments in the movie where I think he's supposed to be singing, but he's doing like a William Shatner spoken word versions of the song, but then he does sing a little bit. It's a bit jarring. It's a bit all over the place, but that's fine. I mean, I can't do an Italian accent. Who am I to say whether he can do one or not? But as I said, Tom Hanks, likable. You watch him in things and you just enjoy seeing him on screen. And he doesn't look like he's doing Geppetto for a paycheck or anything. It looks like he is trying to do the very best with the material that has been given to him. Some other standouts, Keegan-Michael Key voices Honest John, who's the fox who puts into Pinocchio's head the idea that he shouldn't go to school, but you would go and become a famous actor, and sings the Actor's Life for Me song. He really puts 110 into that performance as well. I might be biased because I've always liked the Honest John and Gideon sequence in the original Pinocchio. It's one of my favorite bits because it's fun to see them convince Pinocchio to be a bit of a dickhead, and then they sing these little acting songs or whatever. But Keegan-Michael Key, he's spruced up Honest John for modern times. There's a Chris Pine joke, which is so dumb that I laughed out loud at it, so that was okay. And surprisingly, I didn't know he was in the movie, Luke Evans shows up as the horseman who rounds up all the kids and rules over Pleasure Island. And he's wonderfully maniacal in the film. He sings a little song. He's very creepy the way he lures all the kids into the island and then serves them root beer. Has his own little song. There was a point where I was like, I feel like that's Luke Evans, but he's so disgusting that it might not be him. So that was good. He may have been my favorite performance in the whole movie, which is interesting. That's about it, really. Joseph Gordon-Levitt voices Jiminy Cricket. He's definitely the weakest part in the movie. Jiminy Cricket sounds out of place. He sounds a bit fake. I don't know if that's because of, I don't know if it's hard to voice a cricket, but I didn't like Jiminy Cricket anytime he spoke. I really wanted him to stop talking. Pinocchio is annoying as well, but all kids are annoying, even if they're little wooden boys. As I said, the drawbacks are there's nothing about this movie that really stands out and will make you remember it. But it's also not the worst thing in the world. I was going online, I saw it's getting like 1-star reviews. People are like, oh, this is an insult to Pinocchio and all Disney movies. It's not. Mulan is an insult to Disney films. Okay, maybe the people who wrote the reviews love Pinocchio more than I do. But it's perfectly harmless. It's fine. It's not void of any soul or heart or anything. There's a genuine warmth and love in the film. It's not incredible, but it's there. And no one should watch this movie and feel like they've wasted their time. They may feel like it goes on a little too long, because as I said, with the 2 hours, but it's a fine enough story that is just added to the growing list of Pinocchio movies that exist. And I think for an adaptation, it could have gone a lot worse. It could have done one of the things I mentioned where it's just a play-by-play account, or it could have done something completely different and just not felt like a Pinocchio movie. It balances that line between both those sides, but it doesn't do anything to spruce up that line or anything. I give it a 6 out of 10. I don't give it a 7 because it is very, very, very safe. And I think to get it to a 7 out of 10, it would need to do something that really sticks with me, and nothing particularly sticks with me. I appreciate it. I can respect some performances and all of that, but I won't be going out of my way to watch it again, like if that makes sense. I would buy it on DVD if it came out, but I know it's not going to. So I probably will never see it again, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But I would recommend it, especially for Disney fans. If you're a real big fan of Pinocchio, I would think that you would like this film because it's perfectly respectable to the source material. If you like the live action Disney remakes, there are worse ones than this, that's for sure. I will say this, if you don't have Disney Plus and you're thinking, is Pinocchio the movie I want to get a Disney Plus subscription to? At the moment, it's Disney Plus Day. And when I say it's Disney Plus Day, it's Disney Plus Month or something. Disney Plus Day is coming, from what I could tell. Meaning you can get a month subscription for $2 here in Australia. So $2 for Pinocchio, that's fine. I'd pay $2 for Pinocchio. In fact, I did pay $2 for Pinocchio because I needed to see this movie before I went on my holiday. So if I can say pay $2 for it, can't be terrible. 6 out of 10. Thought it was going to be a lot worse than what it was. Turned out to be fairly pleasant. Nothing incredible. Some good performances. And I've seen a lot worse this year. So there you go. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. As I said, this is my last episode for quite some time. Probably until October. If you're lucky, if I'm lucky, I'll be able to give you an episode in the first week around then. But we'll have to wait and see, one, if I make it back alive, and two, if I'm in the headspace to do an episode, because I want to do my top 10 James Bond films as my next episode, but I think there's quite a few movies that start hitting the ground once we get into the back half of October. So I may just be doing movie reviews for the rest of the year, which is totally fine. I'm happy to do that. But until then, as always, I'd like to thank everybody for listening. I hope you've enjoyed my Pinocchio review. I hope you've enjoyed the many other episodes that I've dropped over the last few months. And if you need your Spliced In Later kick, there's plenty to go back through and have a listen to. I'm pretty proud of 95% of the episodes. If you're new to the channel, if you're new to Spotify, there's a lot there. So feel free to use those if you desperately need to hear my voice over the next few weeks. Otherwise, stay safe, stay kind to one another. I love and appreciate you all as always, and I will see you in a few weeks on the next Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.